Hello, everybody. We have had such a phenomenal response. We are just overwhelmed at the response we've had to this webinar. I am sure it is all credit to our wonderful speaker that we have tonight, Professor Renata Skuman. We are looking forward to such an insightful conversation, a conversation not just around what our mental health professionals seeing in our children, in our teens, in our families, but also what can we do about it? Renata is most and foremost, I think, as all of us would like to brand ourselves, a mum of a young son, but she's also a psychiatrist, she's an academic, and she's a mental health advocate with a full-time private practice. She offers compassionate and evidence-based care to children, adolescents, and adults. And she has particular expertise in cognitive disorders, and I know a specific interest in ADHD, but also eating disorders, mood, and anxiety disorders. Besides being a lecturer involved in Stellenbosch Business School, she also serves on South Africa's Ministerial Advisory Committee on Mental Health, and she leads the South African Society of Psychiatrists Special Interest for ADHD. And if that's not enough, she's also a co-founder of her own NGO, Goldilocks and the Bear, a foundation which supports children with ADHD and other mental health challenges in underserved communities. So we've asked Renata to come and share tonight what her experiences are and what she's seeing in her practice and what her colleagues are seeing. And she's going to help us really understand this development of a child and an adolescent brain and what the real impact of screens is having on this development. Renata is also a passionate supporter of smartphone-free childhood, so we are so thankful to have you here with us tonight, Renata, sharing so kindly everything that you're learning. And I think we all, as parents and educators, need this more now than ever in our quest to make more careful and intentional tech decisions and setting screen time boundaries for our children. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here, and I'm also blown away with the attendees. I think for me, when you ask me to speak, I often think, should I commit to something else? But this is something that's very dear to me, the cause. And yes, because I'm a psychiatrist and I see this on a daily, the impact that the screens have on our little ones and our not so little ones. But also I see what's happening in my household. And it's so easy to consider ourselves we're a good parent or we're a bad parent. Or I often refer to myself as I'm the dragon mom of screen time. And then last week, my boy is now grade R, I attended a demo lesson of one of the extramurals that's offered at his school. And one of the other 5-year-olds came to me and said, Tannie, why is Luca Day not allowed X, Y, and Z, which includes Xbox? And I said to him, to this little 5-year-old, for me, managing my boy's screen time is like having him wear a special seat, a safety seat in the car. It's because I love him and I want to keep him safe and healthy and happy. And that was my way of communicating it to a 5-year-old. And they were happy and they continued. And they know now when they play with my boy, they're outside boys. But at the same time, it's a system issue. It's not about do we parent well or do we not parent well. If we as a system do not stand together, it's going to be difficult because there is this movement in terms of technology and algorithms and exposure and smartphones and devices. And you don't want your child to stay behind. And you don't want to be seen as an outdated mom. But it's about age-appropriate exposure. And not only age-appropriate exposure, but age-appropriate time, content exposure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. That is just a brilliant introduction. And I know, you mentioned just before while we were warming up is your lovely young son is busy watching a little bit of TV with dad. And that's going to be one of the questions that we've had so many questions come through. My 14-year-old is currently on an online maths lesson. And I guess she's also going to be dipping a little bit of TV time. So we, just to start out to say that Smartphone Free Childhood is not an anti-tech organization by any means. But we are definitely in response to all the research that's been coming out in the last 2 years. We are advocating a slower and lower approach to tech, and to give our children and our adolescents and our teens a chance at a childhood that allows them to develop in the way that they are supposed to. So let's start off talking about the brain development. What does typical brain development look like for children and teens?
We know that children are born with a lot of neurons, and then up to the age of 2, there's just more connections and connections forming, and then again a spurt up to 7, where after there's pruning. So the networks and connections you don't need is sort of like chipped away and the good ones reinforced. But in early childhood, things like language is developing, attention is developing, the ability to emotionally regulate. So that is the foundations of social learning and emotional and social intelligence later in life. And they are so malleable in that period of development. Then in the teenage years, there's a shift. Our brains become even more social. We become extremely dependent on rewards and extremely aware of comparison. So we are prone to compare, but then we also want to belong. But our brains, the parts that's supposed to guide our impulsivity and our decision making and thinking in terms of long-term judgment, is not fully formed. That is in your frontal cortex, and your frontal cortex develop up to the age of 23. Now, there's a very good reason that alcohol is banned under a certain age, and driving is banned under a certain age, and you can't sign a contract under a certain age. And it's the same that we should see here, that the exposure that we have, it's vulnerable, the brain, in terms of what you're exposed to, but also how that networks reinforce. And that's where things go wrong, like excessive exposure and certain context exposure literally rewire the brain, not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, you chatted about that. I mean, we talk a lot about the prefrontal cortex, and that's where I know that a lot of the executive functioning skills are developing. And it's exactly things like impulse control, right? And the ability to weigh up risk versus consequence, all that good planning, all those things that we are frustrated that our teens haven't yet mastered. And yet those are exactly that lack of skills, or that gap that's still developing, is exactly where big tech has put billions into, in terms of understanding how to hack and to use that lack of impulse control to cook our teens and get them to stay there. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But why does timing matter? What are the key development tasks that children and teens need to master for longer term healthy mental well-being, into their 20s and into their adulthood?
So one of the things that is extremely important, as you know, that all learning is dependent on attention and concentration. And due to that changes in the brain of this hooking, as you mentioned, the algorithms that we see, people want more and more of it. It's a dopaminergic effect. So you literally become addicted to it as well, but your attention span shortens because you become reward dependent. And now you're sitting in a classroom, and the poor teacher can't compete with a YouTube video or something with bells and whistles. But the other thing is, if we fill all our time with screens, there's no time to practice the skills in real life. We don't have that social interaction. We don't have the failures. Sometimes conversations go wrong in real life, and everything that you say is not okay. If you talk to ChatGPT, always give you positive feedback. Great idea. Well done. Good question. That's not real life. And we need to have that rejection experience also in real life to be able to hone our skills, and we don't see that. The other thing that happens is we lose out on that protective building blocks, the other things like sleep and exercise and real connection. And we also don't learn to handle frustration very well because it's instant gratification. We get bored of this thing that we're watching, we just move on the whole time to something else.
Yeah. So we're always talking a lot about the direct impacts of what happens on screens, and the harms, the cyberbullying and the sextortion and the pornography, the gambling. But you're right. It's also about the missed opportunities. So every hour spent with the screen, yes, exactly, is an hour that a child or a teen could be doing something else and learning something else. So how do screens now actually then impact brain development? How do they change how the brain is developing? What actual impact do screens, and obviously the apps and games that screens host, how do they What impact do they have?
So I'm going again to answer in general screens, but as you mentioned, we need to distinguish between cell phones and TV or gaming, and we need to distinguish between an educational program. I saw some of the questions coming up, the educational YouTube programs, for example, so educational content versus gaming content versus shorts. Shorts is just horrible, but for example, if you look at YouTube, the content creators became very clever, but you think it's a 20-minute video, but it's packed with shorts. It's just shorts because they realize, Mom, look at shorts, and they don't allow that. But the main thing is what's happening, as I mentioned, that reward circuits that is then rewired, and you want more and more instant gratification. You cannot concentrate anymore. But also because of the dopamine deficiencies that you cause by this constant change in screens and overstimulation, we see a poor concentration. We see kids that present with ADHD-like symptoms. But also, we see the other fallout with mood and anxiety disorders. And there's very, very good research which also directly link it, not only with content, but very direct results in terms of causality, in terms of the amount of exposure. And then what we also see is sleep disturbances. So that is the three big things for me, is its attention and concentration, also affect motivation and drive. You know that a teenager can disappear in their room for hours on their phone, and they have no motivation to help with anything else. And you notice, and I sometimes wonder if it's a male thing, and I'm really just saying tongue in the cheek, but men and kids go deaf and blind when there's a screen in front of their face. They can hyperfocus. We know
like
that.
It might be me too, but yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that's happening.
Yeah.
I think what I'm really concerned, so not only that, but what the research have shown more and more, that teenagers that spend 4 to 6 hours on their phone is way more likely to struggle with anxiety or depression than those with less exposure. When you read 5 hours a day as a teenager, you are 70% more likely to have suicidal thoughts and suicidal actions. And it's not only dependent on the content. And it is the content, yes, but it's also the lack of the other things, the direct social interaction, the connection with people, the connection with your parents, and lack of exercise, lack of sleep, and all of those things that we see.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we keep saying, is that connectivity is not equaling connection in our modern day life. And more than ever, I think, as human beings, we're all looking for connection to help us feel alive and literally to stay alive. So what I'm going to be trying to do, because we've had, obviously, with the 2,500 registrations we've had so many great questions, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about how we're going to be answering these questions, but I'm just going to try and weave a couple of them in as we go. So one of the good questions is, can these effects be reversed? So let's talk about that now. Is it possible?
We don't have long-term studies, but we do have short-term, how quick it can repair in a way, or the acute effects disappear. For example, sleep. If I see a teenager that is sleep deprived because of excessive use, mostly during the night or even during the day, if you withdraw it, within weeks at a follow-up, sleep is better, mood is better, anxiety is less. Or if it is query ADHD, but I look at the phone, at the settings, and I see it's 9 hours a day during school time, I said, boy, oh boy, we take the phone and we see how it's going after a month. So definitely, but in youngsters and even in the teenagers, if you just do a digital detox, like make sure that they get enough sleep, no screen time during the night, but also a weekend of no screen time, it makes a difference. I can see in my little one, so I'm quite strict, by no means I'm banning all screen time, but I'm quite strict in terms of a little bit in the morning. And I saw there's other moms also that say that juggling is real when you need to do your morning routine or whatever. So there is 30 minutes of sanity in the morning. Otherwise, we will not get anything done. And then in the evening, there is now co-watching a movie or something. But I see it can be 30 minutes more than the limits that is appropriate for my boy. And he becomes cheeky. He chat back. He doesn't want to brush his teeth. He doesn't want to go to bed. But yeah, the personality changes for me. He's the sweetest boy and very compliant and a real Mr. Goody Two-Shoes at times. He really wants to please. But they pick this up and they become irritable and challenging. And then if I just say, sorry, boy, this is it, there's not too much drama usually, because I'm very strict with the rules and I don't argue about it or negotiate. It's literally tomorrow is better or 3 days later is better. So the best thing is a weekend with a whole household detox. And that's a big thing. And for everyone that's here, all the adults and all the parents, you have to practice what you preach. Children learn by modeling. So if mom and dad is permanently on the phone, or you at their table having dinner and you look at your phone, or your watch beeps with a work message coming in, that's what that's what you model to your child. You cannot then be a hypocrite in expecting your child to behave different.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, what you're talking about is exactly, just we've got to give our children that opportunity to come down from that dopamine high and almost go through that detox. But I'm very reassured that you're telling me this is not like admitting them for a 2-week detox into a clinic, that you're actually really saying that there's small habits that we can introduce in the daily life, which actually help them with that detox. And I absolutely want to say that I am a fan of the number one golden rule. If everybody on this call just takes one thing out, we're going to take lots from you. But one thing from me would be that what I've always done with my children, my eldest is now 18, is that there were no screens in the room at night. We had a common charging station, and it was just a habit. Because, of course, sleep is what you referred to, is one of the fundamental foundations of good mental health. And so many teachers are saying to us that these kids are just sleep deprived and they basically are socially jet lagged. They can't teach until 10 o'clock in the morning. So let's talk about what you're seeing in practice. What mental health and behavioral trends are you seeing in primary school children first?
Primary school children really increase in impulse dysregulation and seeing something that looks like ADHD or pseudo ADHD. Come to me with child is impulsive, moody, emotionally dysregulated, have tantrums and meltdowns, can't concentrate, teacher sent for assessment, or we can't keep house anymore with a child. And we really work through all the habits, how much social activity is there, how much exercise or activities are there, bonding, sleep routine. And then I asked cell phone time, screen time. And people always underestimate it. If they said, oh, no, maybe an hour or 2 a day. And then when we really plot out the day, it's significantly more. And even when we're done with the call, I challenge all the adults that's also on the call and some teenagers that also visiting us tonight is to go to your cell phone settings and go to digital well-being and check what is your actual screen time. When I specialized as a psychiatrist way many moons ago, we had a rule of thumb. If you ask someone about how much alcohol they consume, you can quadruple it. Screen time is virtually the same. If someone thinks they're 2 hours on the phone, it's 5 hours. Yes. So definitely more the behavioral issues in the younger children. But when they reach puberty, and especially in the high school children, more eating disorders, definitely more anxiety and mood disorders. And it has to do with the social comparison, but it also has to do with sleep deprivation. But the scary thing that we see is I see kids that's traumatized by exposure to content that they shouldn't have been. Pornography. We have a 9-year-old that is really struggling with pornography. And 14-year-olds that been involved in, and there's not a week that goes by where there's not a drama with someone that sent someone else inappropriate photos on a weekly basis. A teenager just give into the pressure. They don't think what they do. They don't have the understanding what they send on the phone is as good as you post it on a billboard. It's there forever. They don't understand that someone else might share it again because the other person is also impulsive. And the fallout of that, the social fallout, the mood fallout. And we know about international cases where kids have committed suicide because of that. So, it's small things that we see, but it can really escalate.
So what are you most concerned about? Yeah, what are you most concerned about right now for our South African young people?
The young ones, definitely they're learning how it affects their academic performance. And then in teenagers and even young adults, I think that the culture of instant gratification and lack of social regulation and self-regulation. So I'm really worried that we're creating a generation that is not prepared to persevere with anything. It's instant gratification, it's instant results. And I'm also worried about youngsters. And I understand it's a generational thing, and it can be a career, a YouTuber. To be a YouTuber, that is their biggest aspiration in the world. And I think it's cool if you're a Mr. Beast or someone, but not everyone is going to be Mr. Beast. So So some
Yeah.
of these people I had to learn about. But for me, I am worried that we lose the skill to critically think, to critically make decisions. And also, we don't want a bunch of youngsters that's very good at hiding stuff from their parents. That's not what we want. We want open communication. I want my child. I allow some content, and if I don't like the attitude of even some TV programs, you can see it's American influence, and it's a very cool and very entitled youngsters or privileged youngsters, and the way that they talk is not on. And I don't want to be the policeman. I want my boy to be able to tell me, Mommy, let's watch something else.
Mm.
And I want him to be able to do it in my absence. And that's
So,
what we should instill, that values in our kids.
so here's a lot of questions we got, and we do get is are things really that bad? Are screens really having such a dire impact? What you're seeing locally, is this correlating with the global research that's coming out, and including the concerns that have been raised by researchers like Dr. Jonathan Haidt and Jean Twenge?
Yes. I would really, if you haven't read The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, it should be on your reading list. And yes, there's criticism from general public, from some academics, but at least read it with an open mind. And if you think in terms of what Bill Gates at the end of last year, he also wrote a whole article on how we moved from over-parenting in the real world. We are too scared that our child crossed the street to go and buy ice cream, to under-parenting in the digital world. And what Haid and his group of researchers have shown, and the research is ongoing and you can access it on their website as well, is with the rise of smartphones, there was a clear increase in mental health disorders, more so in female teenagers. So the girls are specifically prone to mood and anxiety disorders, where the boys have more attention and concentration and behavioral dysregulation, children and adolescents. But in 2010, it was clearly convergent, and that was the rise of the smartphones. And then COVID brought other challenges. But the real increase in mental health conditions was not around COVID in our younger population. For adults, yes, but for the younger population, it was around 2010 when the smartphones were introduced.
Yeah. Okay, so you resonate with this big shift in thinking that's happening in the past 2 years. And in fact, the South African Society of Psychiatrists last year issued its position statement on excessive screen time and its impacts on mental health. What was the reason for this?
I think what is very important is to remember that we didn't bring out the position statement to create panic, nor do we consider ourselves the moral police of the country. Definitely not. But it's a call to really think critically in terms of how much exposure, what we're exposed to, and what time. Bearing in mind that we are very pro the educational benefits it might have and how it can be a very powerful educational tool and also a necessary skill for the future for children and adolescents and adults to have. So it's definitely not a ban, but we did bring in guidelines. We did want to warn and make people aware of the mental health concerns, of the sleep disturbances, of the physical health concerns that we see in terms of a sedentary lifestyle, but also the negative effect on academic performance. So we wanted to bring that to the fore and just reinforce international guidelines that was set in terms of the amount of screen time exposure. And I saw it is a question also coming up in terms of how much. So we believe below 2, nothing, 2 to 5, maybe 1 hour a day, above 5, maybe 2 hours a day. Saying that, once again, we need to understand that if devices is used in the educational context, it's not right to just ban all other, to have that absolute 2-hour limit, but a child should have some recreational screen time as well. But then you need to watch with your child, depending on the age, and monitor and have some balancing in place. The second thing that we also really just wanted to say, that educational institutions shouldn't just grab technology as, yes, we need to use it. We know that there's an international movement that they now found that technology in the classroom is not always beneficial. And what should be in place? It should have purpose. There must be clear purpose, and there must be structured usage, and there must be time-limited usage in an educational context.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we subscribe to too. And we had a webinar on that last year with one of our wonderful team members. Bronwyn Desjardins, and very much, I think we're in the space, particularly in South Africa, where we have very different challenges here in terms of education, but really trying to look at this more mindful, intentional use of edtech that is also safeguarded and preferably school owned and school controlled, because as soon as we as parents try to delay smartphones, we are coming up against this hurdle where we have now to invest in iPads or tablets that are coming home at primary school, and they're exactly the same. So, lovely to hear that you resonate as well with that. And of course, it's not just about screen time; it's also about what is being accessed and watched, and the platform that is designed to hook them in. So all screens are not equal. I think you've mentioned that. Certainly, our social media platforms, which are so driven by algorithms designed to hook and to basically manipulate the young teenage brain, are a particular concern, as well as many of our gaming platforms.
Yeah, I think it is important. One attendee did mention here also to be nuanced. I fully agree. We must understand that some kids will be more vulnerable and some adolescents will be more vulnerable to the negative effects of excessive screen time, especially if there is already a genetic risk or a prehistory. But unfortunately also our most vulnerable children that already experience academic challenges or self-esteem challenges or social exclusion are also more likely to revert to excessive use. There's also benefits. If you have certain, and I don't want to talk clinical psychiatry here, but we know that for certain groups of individuals with certain mental health conditions, phones might be a window to the world and the only way of connecting. So it is a nuanced discussion, absolutely. But I do think we're talking now to general people as well, general moms. I'm a mom. What would I want to know? Obviously, my child is an individual, and there is individual discussion that also needs to take place.
Yeah, and we are getting lots of questions about how much screen time for different ages, and certainly we're going to be sharing a whole bunch of resources in the follow-up email to this. So fuss bait, hold tight. You're going to get a whole lot of information coming out, and hope it's going to be really useful. Renata, can you just share with us a few clinical stories that really give us maybe some insights into what screens are doing to families?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. And the thought just was triggered now by what I've just discussed when I saw what one of the attendees mentioned. I've seen recently towards the end of last year, there's always the grade 11 scramble before the end of the year exams. We call it the grade 11 scramble. And a boy that also came in with, desperate about the academic marks, considered or referred with possible ADHD. And I almost now have a standard in my practice that I ask, can I see your screen time? And I don't fiddle on the phones, but I sit next to the teenager. Let's see what's going on. How much screen time? When is the screen time? What type of screen time? I do it with the adults as well. So by the way, they are as guilty often. And this boy was 9 hours a day on his screen.
Just
5
couldn't help
hours a day
himself.
during school time,
Yeah.
in the classroom. And the others were during the night. He was in a hostel, but in the hostel they had access to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Now, subsequently, I'm very grateful that specific school and the hostel have now switched off Wi-Fi during the night, and the kids have to hand in their phones after, it came to 4. He's not on any medication for ADHD because that was not the case. I saw a very high functioning girl that developed panic attacks and school refusal, teenager as well. And then it came out that there was a lot of online bullying after some illicit photos was sent. And there was bullying, and she was too embarrassed and too shy to discuss this with the parents. And we had to, with the help of therapists as well, we had to unpack all of this and repair what was broken at that stage. And then in the little ones, I've heard horror stories of one of my colleagues, that's a developmental neurologist, which saw that a nonverbal child that was seen for query autism came in, and the child was parked in front of the screen, and they detox from the screen, and the child developed speech. But then for me, I often see that dysregulation, and because the easiest solution when your child is having a meltdown about a screen is just to give in and give the screen, we have to break that pattern. But it doesn't help necessarily to just have bans on it. There's different type of parenting, and maybe if there is time, we can touch on that again.
Okay. Do you think most parents are aware of what their children are seeing and experiencing online?
No. As I said, I'm the dragon mom, and I have an old phone, a S4, that is not connected to anything. And I downloaded a few educational games. And that is like real emergencies, like I have a webinar and hubby is not at home. I don't want the TV on without me being able to see what's happening on the TV. So little one is parked here next to me on the carpet with the old S4 with 4 or 5 games. I looked at it about 3-4 months ago, and suddenly there's new games. I don't know how he had access to it because it's not even connected to Wi-Fi. Then I figured out at that stage, he was still 4. He figured out how to, he took the nanny's phone when she went to the bathroom. He created a hotspot and he hotspotted between the 2 phones. There's adults that don't know how to hotspot. So having all the checks and balances in my house in place, it can happen here. The other thing that I realized my husband really battled to understand, even when we're cooking, it's open plan. And my little one wants to watch an educational thing on YouTube. I absolutely hate YouTube, but sometimes they are educational material. But what you put on now is not necessarily what they're watching 5 minutes later, because there's interruptions, there's things that pop up. It can change. Even if you have a subscribed YouTube, it is not safe. And you don't know what they're exposed to at other people's houses, what they're exposed to at older siblings, if there's siblings in the house. So no parent can exactly know what your child is exposed to. And the only thing you can do is to instill the values and to have open communication with your child to say, what have you seen? Talk to me. And as far as possible, to co-watch with them.
Or delay as long as possible. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So parenting styles, what do you mostly see parenting styles around screens? What's helpful and what's not?
The younger parents often is very permissive, but everyone has it. So my child also have it. And I think also if you're the only one in your school group, or you're the only dragon mom in the group, it's very difficult because you don't want your child to be excluded because they need to be tech savvy as well. So then people often be permissive for the fear of you as a mom being excluded or your child being excluded. Now that is not helpful. We need boundaries and we need guidelines. Then I see call myself, as I said, the dragon mom, but I'm really not. It's the people that put blanket bans. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, and it's monitored and 300 apps on the phone, so I know exactly what my child is doing when. I don't know when you then working if you're on the apps all the time to monitor your child, because then it's the hypocrite thing again. But it's not working, it's not foolproof. The only thing that does is make your child secretive. The thing that works best is more authoritarian, not in a bad way, authoritative.
Authoritative.
That word. That word.
Yes.
So where it's firm, it's discipline, but it's warm communication and there's explanation. Whether your child is 2 or 5 or 15, you can never just say no. You need to explain why. So there's rules and boundaries, but we have open, warm communication.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of us, especially if you're my age, we grew up under very much more what you were initially saying, authoritarian, do as I say and don't ask questions. And I think what we've seen, and I've seen a lot of my peers, and especially younger parents, has been the swing towards, maybe a knee-jerk permissive parenting, which is, yes, my darling, of course, my darling, which is not helpful because, of course, those boundaries and that safety net is what a child needs, even if they're going to fight against it. That is what they're craving and what they're needing, right? So what does good digital parenting look like to you in practice?
Firstly, role model. We need to take out our books again. We need to take out games again, puzzles. We need to be outside and active. So that is for me the very, very first step. Start with yourself and what you model for your child and how you behave. Leave your phone in the kitchen with the other phones. Have the charging station there. But if you like this, you can't expect your child to develop a love for books or the outdoors or whatever. The second thing is to have time limits. And time limits can look different in different households, depending if you're online schooling or not and the age of the child. Timers works well, where a phone just go gray. Kids love color. So if the screen goes gray, it's not interesting anymore. So use that. You need subscription channels. If you want your child to watch something, make sure that you have parental control on it. Up to a certain age, go watch. I remember vividly, my parents, when I grew up, were quite strict. And I remember the very, very first rated movie I saw, I think back in the days, was Cocktail, which I ate 16 rating. And my mom watched it with me and I was busy dying. Now, I don't think we should do that to our teenagers, but help them to make good decisions. And I think have information, share information, have discussions, and then have check-ins. I know that there's a lot of adults that check the phones. I think there is value in it, but you need to know your child. For some children that would have the opposite reaction. Crucial, no phones in a bedroom, no screens in a bedroom, preferably. If there is a place where there's a communal workspace, even for laptops, whatever, but there should be no TV, preferably no laptops, and definitely no cell phones in a bedroom. Onheil gebeur in die nag. I don't know how to translate that now, but
No,
mischief
nothing
happens
good
in the night.
happens late at night, and tired
Exactly.
brains make bad choices. That's what I say to my kids all
Adults
the
as
time.
well. There's a
Exactly.
very good reason why after 9 o'clock, you don't phone someone. You shouldn't
Yes.
have access.
No emails. Don't write that email at night.
Yeah.
So if you could call for 3 changes, what 3 changes would they be?
Cell phone free zones, definitely cell phone free bedrooms, and cell phone free spaces, like no screens at a table. Secondly, delay access to social media platforms, but even to smartphones. There's other ways you can communicate with your child. And thirdly, surround yourself with like-minded people. And that's where SFC comes in and the pact. And I really, really hope that my little one's group of peers, the parents we can all be on the same page, because we can start to change our little system and maybe influence bigger communities in safeguarding our kids.
Exactly what we're about here at SFC, is just creating a non-judgmental, supportive community, because we're all learning as we go, right? Every day is a new day, and let's just learn together and stand together. We're going to turn in a little bit to now, what can we do? So we're going to talk about a bit of proactive, just around that standing together, and what that looks like, and how we can help parents out there. We are part of a global movement. And Renata, it's amazing that we are now seen. We were one of the early starters, actually, quite soon in 2024, after the UK chapter first started and initiated this wave. There are now 54 chapters around the world. I mean, it's just amazing how this is really expanding. And we've said we're not anti-tech. We are really about advocating for age-appropriate access to the right content that's going to feed our children rather than inhibit them. And our passion is protecting children and protecting their mental health. So smartphones have become this particular source of concern because, as I said earlier, they become this 24/7 age accessory once a child gets them. Do you support giving children a smartphone? And if so, this is the golden question that's come up. Many questions that have come up here tonight have involved this. Until what age?
I think I've answered some of the questions here, and I said a little bit tongue of the cheek. If I had a choice, it will be until 17 years. If I have a choice, I suppose we don't know where we are going to be in 10 years. My little one is 5. So hopefully it's out of fashion, and hopefully there's better things replacing it by then. He will definitely not have his own phone until secondary school at the minimum. And if I can allow him to or if I can prohibit him, or I can't, but avoid him having access to brain rot type of content, or TikTok or Insta. Also, late teenage years, 16 plus. Other type of content earlier. But yeah, I will delay as far as possible. I will definitely introduce coding type and certain type of logic games maybe earlier when he's a bit older, and even now maybe limited access. I think that is important for him and his development, and also the terminology. But I suppose the answer is not only the age. It's important because that can make it then a blanket, and easier for us to drive than to say everything needs to be individualized. But digital literacy, that is maybe the key. And we are putting phones and devices and content in the hand of young children and teenagers, but we do not give them the skills, the digital literacy. We're under-parenting in the online environment.
Now, as parents, I mean, we as a mum, and I'm thinking back to, when my children were both in primary school, it you've got a gut instinct about what is right and what's going online, and you want to protect your children, but it's often hard to start conversations with other parents, with other educators, with caregivers around that, and why you're responding like you've referred to yourself as a dragon mum, which I don't think so at all. I think it's a very natural response to what um, are the real risks involved. Um, why do you think it's so hard for us to be able to open up those conversations with others? Do you think we're going to feel judged? Do we, why do we find it so
Yeah,
difficult to be
yeah.
brave?
Definitely judge, definitely that you deprive your child of something. One of his best friends, parents allow way more than I do. And it was interesting when this little child, I don't even want to say the gender, my boy loved girls and he loved boys and he loved playing with all of them. Um, that when the child started coming to visit us, the child couldn't really engage in different play or even independent play. And most recently, the child gave me a hug and said, "It's so nice to come to us because we play." And for me, I don't care what their parents are saying in the end. If they think I'm old-fashioned or whatever, or I am being a ridiculous psychiatrist, I don't care. But if my boys' friends feel the benefits and feel the connection, then it's all worthwhile.
Okay, so the tip I was going to ask you, what tips can you give as a mum and a professional? So I'm not going to leave it there as that. Well, I don't care. So do you just practice a little bit of a script? Do you kind of what tips can you give us for all of us who are
I
wanting to?
share. I share
Yes.
information. When we wrote the position statement, I say I care. I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I care for my
Yeah.
child's
Yes.
sake. But I am an older mom, which I think makes it
Yes.
easier. You feel a little bit of less peer pressure
Yeah.
because you're not younger. When we brought out the position statement last year, I shared it on the mums groups. I'm not a big fan of the groups. I get anxious
Yes.
with everything I need to read, but I share information. For me, that is the most effective way. Share on Facebook, share on LinkedIn, share in the WhatsApp groups, but spread the word. When I got involved with SFC and first time last year with the Congress, when we spoke and got involved with each other, I share the content. And often people are not that comfortable to speak about it, but if you can just share information. And next time when you sit and chat, the conversation about phones and social media always do come up. Take the gap. You do not have to convert everyone. But once again, if you can model, and if they know that at play dates, there's no TV time when kids come to you, the kids tell their parents and the kids
Yeah.
start to talk, but the parents start to talk. But don't threaten, just try to inspire, try to spread the word. Someone else can do the converting.
Okay, that's a good place to start. I think little small steps. I think I found in my experience that quite often people are more receptive than you realize. You will get the ones that are pushing back and say, you know what, it's a digital age and the kids are born tech savvy and they've got to learn how to manage, the online world,
Mm.
and unless there's a crisis, which is often what you're going to see in your consulting practice, I'm not going to worry. They must learn how to manage. But there are also the parents that say, sure, I've also been quietly, thinking similar. I'm so glad you reached out. And yes, I'd love to have a chat. And let me come and have a look at more of the information on the SFC website. So I think we also can often be surprised in these brave conversations about the reactions that we get. Of course, here at SFC, one of the things at the heart of what we do is the Parent Pact. So an innovative online pack system where parents can go in and find their child's primary school and they can sign a pact for their child, and then they will be connected monthly with other parents in that school and in that grade so that they can find their supportive tribe and all stand together and in this idea of being committed to delaying smartphones at least until high school. You yourself have asked about pre-primary schools, and at this stage we just don't have the resources to upload all the pre-primary in schools in the country. But of course we have prepared a manual pack that can be put up, next to perhaps the poster that's asking for volunteers for the upcoming cake sale, because pre-primary parents tend to walk into school with their little ones anyway. But this is definitely about helping to create the supportive standing together network of primary school parents. What are your views on that approach?
I absolutely agree, because I really want to extend it to grade R and even earlier if we can catch them preschool, because by the time they're in school, they often already have a device in hand, and we
No.
want to prevent that.
Are you
So
serious?
we
At 5 or
need,
6, you're seeing
yes, yes,
devices already.
yes,
Well,
yes. They all have pads, except mine, but
iPads.
they all have iPads. You see it in the restaurants. I mean, if you go out
iPads is the
somewhere, there is
same.
not a child, they
Yeah.
don't have an iPad and earphones.
Yeah.
So I do believe we need to find a way of reaching earlier, and perhaps the primary schools know who is the feeder schools. And maybe start with the primary schools that's already in the network and reach out to their feeder schools. Don't try to reach all, I think there's 2,200 primary schools just in the Western Cape. Never mind pre-primary schools that we know there's even more. So yeah, I definitely want to catch earlier. The other thing that I want to say is that people often forget, and I saw someone remarked here about what is some examples. Something very, very simple that we do as a family. Whenever we go somewhere, we pack this little sandwich baggie. I take Lego, all the old Lego, and I throw it in the Lego, and we sit and build in the restaurants, we build Lego. When he was a bit younger, you had to be careful about what you drink. It might have turned into a Lego cocktail. But now it doesn't happen anymore. But what we saw, and you have the places that you frequent commonly, and you start to see how other families are starting, they have their little emergency baggie of Lego, or
Yeah.
coloring books and pencils also always goes with. And the restaurants people watch, people see, people notice, and we forget the impact that these small changes can have. So yeah, luckily I love playing, I love being outside, and I yet have to find it. And someone mentioned here as well, I think it was Nika, that said kiddos will always default to the parent playing with them. If you give them an alternative, do you want to do this or do you want to do this with mommy? They will choose the alternative until you've lost them to the screens.
Yeah.
Until you've lost
And
them, then it's difficult.
I completely resonate. I mean, going out with my teens, and I've got an 18-year-old and an almost 15-year-old, and yeah, I mean, we take cards. I think cards have made a big return, and so many card games that we're revisiting from our youth, but also card games that the teens are teaching us, and that's also a fantastic thing to have at all stages with your older kids. So we've, as I said, we've had so many questions. We are going to try and respond to a lot of the questions that came up when people were registering. What we have done, and we've just launched it yesterday, is, and we're going to be building on this, is frequently asked questions on our website. So if you look under the resources tab, you will see a lot of FAQs, and then there are a lot of resources that we prepared. So a lot of the questions that people are having: how do I start a conversation around a parent pact in my school? How do I talk to grandparents about screen time? How do I talk to others about play dates and sleepovers and having device-free opportunities for the kids to play? So we have been looking at all of that. We've prepared lots of lovely guides there. So we're going to be sending you all the links so that you can delve into that. And we hope that you're going to find that super helpful in having these conversations and starting to rethink how we engage each other, how we engage ourselves and our families in this more mindful quest around giving our children the maximum opportunity to live large offline. So I am going to say right now, Renata, you've shared so many amazing, wonderful insights and tips with us. And I'm going to hand over to Claire, who's going to just come on. We've had two wonderful sponsors that just need to be given a quick thank you to. And we're going to talk about the next steps of what you are all going to receive. And also a little bit of an insight and a tip about what our next webinar is going to be, which is going to be a pretty amazing one. So I just want to hand over here to Claire, and then we'll end off with our thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I get the honored task of thanking these two very special people who have stepped up to the plate to make this particular webinar the exceptional success that it has been. First of all, to the hubby of one of our ambassadors, Gary from Corvest. He came to our aid at the very last minute. So we just want to say thank you very much to Gary and Nika. And then to Sam from Funky Things Smartwatches, because she is a mom and she's a huge SFC supporter. And it's in fact actually the second time that she's partnered with us. So Sam, can I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you so much, Claire. I think I just want to start off to say I am also a parent with the same concerns, and I think this webinar just highlighted why I started my business. And so we thank you, Renata, for sharing all this information on why we don't want to give our children screens. But for me as a parent, my question was, okay, what now? What do I do now? So when my kids started primary school, my husband and I, we decided we didn't want to give him a cell phone for all the right reasons. But what do we do now? So what I did is I looked for cell phone alternatives on the South African market. I just couldn't find something that I felt that I could trust my child's safety with. So what did I do? I made it my personal mission. I flew overseas and I met with the top kids smartwatch manufacturers, and we developed our Funky Thing Kids Safe Watch. So what this watch does is it doesn't have any social media, games, internet, or even AI. Yes, these smartwatches comes out with an AI. So we don't have anything of that. And when we developed this watch, it was really out of a heart of a parent wanting to prioritize their safety. It also has features like accurate GPS tracking, so you know where they are at all times. So what I really say is that yes, we do live in this day and age. Our children are not with us all the time. We need to stay connected, but what do we do? So this is basically, it's that bridge where don't want to give a cell phone yet, but I need to stay connected. So our kids' smartwatches comes really in handy for that. Like I said, I'm a mom of 3 boys. I just felt like I was probably not the only parent struggling with this. And a year in, we can really see that we've helped thousands of parents get peace of mind. So what I wanted to say is tonight we have a special offer for you guys. We're not going to leave you high and dry there. So with our code, or with the code SFC with a hyphen SA, if you search our website www.funkyfin.com, or in the community corner on SFC's website, right, Claire?
Yes, on
Yes,
the
correct.
website, our community corner absolutely has got your.
Yes,
Yes.
so you can go there, you can use the code, and then you get a 10% discount on the watch. So really see this as an investment in your child's safety, not just physical safety, but also online. I also just want to say, the most robust question that we get is, but won't it also be a distraction? First of all, like we said, we don't have the social media, games, etc., but we also have a class mode function. So when they're in class, all they can see is the time, and then they can make an SOS call if there's an emergency. I think it's just designed out of the heart of a parent, for parents, and the children think that it's the coolest thing. They feel like they're a spy, but on spy mission. But it's really just for us to keep them safe and give us peace of mind.
Thank you, Sam. That's amazing. We completely support you. And thank you also to Renata, because this has been an incredible opportunity to hear from such an expert as yourself, and for taking the time to attend to these queries and concerns for all of us here at the SFC family. And then most importantly, or not least importantly, to our SFC family, we've got a really exciting couple of updates to tell you about. So Kate has already mentioned the new button that we just put onto our website. We did let you guys know that we are building this website as we go. The resources tab is now at the top banner, and we will be adding more and more as we go. So keep checking in. We've taken all of your questions that you sent in tonight, and we maybe weren't able to generate all the answers or have those resources available right now, but we'll definitely build those alongside the industry experts. And one area that came up, which we weren't able to answer immediately, was regarding the advocacy efforts, especially in light with the Australian laws that have been implemented. So in our next month's webinar, guys, we are going to be talking to Daniela from the Heads Up Alliance, which is the Aussie version of SFC. So that webinar will be a little bit later at night because, Shane, we really have to be sensitive to the man that he is going to be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be speaking to us. So make sure that you've subscribed to one of our channels or all of our channels, the WhatsApp, the Substack, or our socials, because we'll be letting everybody know that the link is ready for that webinar. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much. Yes, and Danny is so excited to come and join us and to be sharing, how he inspired, his organization inspired, in fact, the legal changes that we've seen in Australia and what they're learning so far from the implementation. Because, of course, we can delay giving our children smartphones, but until, into high school, whatever age that is. But it's a very slippery slope then once a child has a smartphone, or indeed an iPad or a tablet, a smart device, that slippery slope into social media. And, more and more what we're seeing with Europe picking up as well is it is looking like a global trend at bringing in minimum age restrictions around the 16, 15-year age mark for what is currently an unregulated product. And do follow us on our socials because we're going to be chatting a little bit more there and giving you more insights into the incredible lawsuit that's currently going on around the product design, really around those algorithms that Renata has been talking about that is hacking our children's brains and bringing the social media platforms to account for the harm that those are doing in terms of the product design. So look out for your email tomorrow. We're going to have lots of resources there. Please, if you haven't signed a parent pack for your child, if they're still in primary school, go onto our website and find your child's school. If you're in a pre-primary school, please download off our website or reach out to us at info@sfc-sa.co.za and we'll send it to you, the manual pack system. If you are in a school that you're trying to get them to go phone free, look on our FAQ. You can download the conversation guide there. If you're at a school that has gone phone free, please encourage them to sign up on our register. These are all amazing initiatives that we are going to try now as our next phase work at putting this live data and this live information so that parents like you can search for the school that you want to send your child to. You can make the best decisions in the interests of your child. So Renata, thank you for your time. I am from a mum of an older children to a mum of a younger child. All I can say is my biggest wish is that we can build for this next generation of kids an environment in which there is so much less pressure on them from the digital world and less pressure on parents, that this incredible anxiety that we are all living on as parents, because we are really so concerned about what's going online and we can't follow our children. We don't know what's happening. I know as a mum that's the type of stuff that keeps you awake at night. So I hope that we are entering a much more hopeful era for parents and for children. And I hope that, Renata, you share that hope. I know it might decrease your practice, but I guess at some stage you would like to retire. So, but I think you would be grateful and celebrate if you saw less screen-related issues and maybe more of the other issues. So thank you for being with us, and thank you to our entire community for being here on this Tuesday night. Renata, anything you'd like to say before we go?
No, I think I've mentioned everything, and my head is working overtime in terms of how can we really get this message out. And I definitely think it's something that we should have on the agenda at the Ministerial Advisory Committee as well, if we think in terms of policy changing. But the one thing I think it's very important that people should not see us, I speak for myself as the mom, but also SFC, they must understand very clearly we're not banning technology, we're not anti-technology, we're not anti-connection, but it's about digital literacy, it's about judicious use, and in the end, to develop resilient and resourceful young people.
Wonderful. We're going to leave it there. That is so well said. Thank you, everybody. If your children are already in bed, go and give them a little sweet kiss on the cheek. Otherwise, go and give them a hug. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you at our next webinar soon.